Deep breath, Sean.
There we go. All right. Look at that. Easy as pie, as they say, right?
Right. 2 hours later.
Well, we've made some additions. We've got some new, as always, we've got more stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like there is, if anyone is like doing like an episode by episode plot, it is every episode, there's another bit of kit in this room.
Is.
Like
there absolutely
every,
is. Yes,
without fail, which, you would think the way you would do it normally is to get it all ironed out first, then slowly add. Nah.
No, but this is the goes wrong version of the podcast where we've got 2 or 3 things here that might collapse
That's right.
halfway through.
There's a few items precariously placed around the studio that is a temporary thing just for today. That may or may not come crashing down as I look nervously over there. As I realize it is above one of our cameras too, but that's okay. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. The show will go on, as they say, right?
The show will go on.
I mean, this
one
is
way or another.
This is also the beauty of yet another July edition of Modem Futura.
It is. It is. Yes. Yes.
It's also, I kind of like we change. I mean, again, if you watch the show often, you'll notice we've moved some things and it feels much more open.
I like this actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's more.
As long as we don't have any more guests, we're
that's
fine.
True. Well, see, I think what we're discovering is one, so if anyone out there has big, like donor money, buy us a bigger studio. That'd be helpful. So thank you for that. Also, I'm like, when we have guests, we just go down into the Future Being Human laboratory.
We do, yes.
and go from there.
Yep.
So it kind of works out nicely. We kind of have like,
yes.
our studio. And then when we otherwise, I don't know where we're going to put people.
I know.
We're going to have to and our guest who's sitting awkwardly on my lap will be, that would be an interesting
or maybe not. Yes.
No, we won't do that. But yeah, no, this is, again, I'm just thrilled to have it. I mean, it is still sweaty in here.
It is.
Haven't sorted that, but
I think it was our hottest day here yesterday.
It was brutal.
Close to 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those times where, doing a simple task like walking to your car or taking recycling out to the bin or whatever. And you feel the heat on your eyes when you walk out. Like, even if you have sunglasses on, it's not the wind. It's like, some people be like, oh, it's just the wind drying out your eye.
No, it's the air.
It's the air.
Yes.
And the thing that, is, again, hard to describe to people who don't have experience living in extreme heat, like that's routine like this, is that, trying to explain some of like the thermodynamics of this, right? I'm like, what happens to an ice cube when you put it in like warm liquid, right? The ice cube melts because the temperature exchange is going from the ice to the liquid. And I'm like, when it's over 98.6 degrees.
Right, body temperature.
Yep. We are the ice cubes.
Right.
So when you go into this environment, like, your body is trying to cool off that hot air.
Yep.
And so it just extracts everything from you and just leaves you just in an absolute miserable state.
So I would also add to this, and this is the thing that never ceases to amaze me living here in Arizona. And that is those days when you go out and it's about 115 degrees in a dry heat. Some people pay good money for this. And for those first 2 or 3 minutes, this feels like a spa. And then the discomfort kicks in.
Radically, quickly. And it's weird too. I mean, again, for me, one of the strange experiences is when I go out into, and I don't know, I should probably look this up to be like, is this a sign of something I should be careful of? It's like, I get chilled. Have you ever experienced that where you walk into and it's 114 or 150 and I get like goosebump and chills almost. It's a bizarre experience. And I think, I just take it as my body is saying, alarm, alarm, this is not okay. You should,
I've also got to add to this. I maybe this is the difference between us because I've lived here 10 years and I still get these little bits of wonder at the weirdness of it.
Yeah.
But one of the weirdnesses is in the middle of the summer, again, 110, 115 degrees outside, and you go in the pool and you get out and you feel cold.
Yeah.
Because that water is evaporating so fast.
Well, and I would say too, a fascinating experience is, which I never noticed. So I grew up, in very humid places in the Midwest and, over in Western Europe, very humid, right? Not like here. And what is, I think, crazy here, you can feel the evaporation.
Oh,
when you walk outside, you can almost feel that just that cool sensation for momentary.
Yes.
Until it sucks all the moisture out of you. But it's wild. And that, we don't have a pool. And when we first moved here, our kids were very small. So I was like, having a pool makes me too nervous, all this kind of stuff. Now with our kids are older and they can swim and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, I really wish we had a pool. For that exact reason, I'm like, just being able to go, even though the water is like sweat in terms of its heat temperature, you're like, wow, this is warmer than
body temperature. Yeah. I know.
I'm like, I think I'm sweating in this pool, but I can't tell. But then you get out, and then you go from there to an air conditioned place.
No, yeah.
And then you're like,
freezing.
Where's my sweatshirt? And I'm like, it is the most bizarre. As I say that, while I'm like literally just dripping with sweat. Goodness.
Anyway, what are we going to be talking about today? Presumably not living in Arizona and the pains of an Arizona summer.
No, we can leave that. Well, you know what? Let's take a quick pause. We'll run the intro and then we'll jump back into our summer edition of Modem Futura.
Initializing waveform.
Modulating signals for transmission.
Exploring the possible, probable, and preferable futures.
Welcome to Modem Futura. Okay, so quick movie update. I saw Superman.
Yeah. Oh, great. We're going tomorrow. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Gut reaction with no spoilers of any sort. Although it would be pretty hard to spoil a Superman movie, I think.
I cannot imagine what happens. Who is this person, Superman?
The story. I did. And again, I've not been a huge like reader of the comics and things like that. So I don't know all of like the little background pieces, but I know most of the main storyline anyway. I thought it was very entertaining. It was a great summer movie, a great superhero movie. I don't really have any negatives about it other than, I wasn't expecting it to be like this, deep moving cinematic experience, but it was incredibly fun.
Yep.
Saw it in a really nice Dolby Atmos theater, which had like 110 speakers or something like that.
Yes.
So that was pretty
fully
cool.
Immersive,
Fully immersive. I will watch it again on my Vision Pro though, to have the truly immersive experience without someone's very intense cologne that was sitting next to me that, was stinging the nostrils.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of the experience, everything around it.
Yeah.
It's not just the movie.
Hearing people point out, who's that guy? He's from the show we watched.
The couple next to you just chattering away.
Exactly. And those are, but still, it was still a great experience. So I had a lot of fun. But yeah, and again, I think it was a fun ride.
Yep.
There were some unexpected like delights in it as well, from like different cameos and different little weavings of other stories, kind of threading it through to kind of ground it. I thought was pretty good.
Okay, good.
So
I'm looking forward to this as well. And it actually reminds me, we had this conversation off air the other day, but we ought to talk about Megan 2, which was the surprise for me. So you haven't seen? No, I haven't seen either of them.
And going like back when we talked to Taryn a while, and I forget how many episodes ago that was. She was mentioning that as one of these these new sort of emergent forms of storytelling because it has like an interactive app available to it. But so this to me. So your post was, I really liked it, and then you went out, and the initial reaction is like, Andrew fell down, hit his head. I don't know.
I know. It's sort of all my academic cred just completely gone. But I'll tell you sort of what I liked about it. So anybody who hasn't bothered watching these, and I should say, sort of the first Megan came out a couple of years ago, and I didn't watch it.
Okay.
And I didn't watch it because I was so over this idea of a movie that's ostensibly about the dangers of artificial intelligence, which I thought was interesting, and then just turns into a bulk standard horror movie.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not in for this sort of playing AI up into a horror story. However, with Megan 2 coming out, I actually watched the original and actually thought it was quite good fun. But Megan 2 is very different. So the first one is very much in the horror genre. The second one is very much in the techno thriller genre.
Okay, that's better.
And plays up this idea of AI even more. But what really got me is, it's a really, really silly movie. There is
because would I be wrong in saying that it's sort of like a new spin on Chucky?
No, it's I actually, it departs quite a lot from
Okay,
Chucky.
okay.
Yeah, you might think that's a super
doll.
No, it's not
Okay.
a possessed doll, but it's an AI doll that ostensibly was sort of made as a child's companion, but a very smart AI doll.
Okay.
Where of course everything goes completely wrong. So there's a little bit of Terminator in there.
Okay.
And in fact, the second one plays on this. There are so many homages to sort of different sort of sci-fi
Okay.
AI movies. It's actually quite
Which
wonderful.
that alone is kind of interesting, right?
It is.
Just to have the nods constantly.
Just
You're
seeing the nods are great in it, but really silly movie. But I came away thinking this is a movie I could write about. So the history here, of course, is I'm back in the dark, distant sort of past. I wrote this book, sort of Films from the Future, which is about taking science fiction movies.
still available on Amazon.
Thank you. But actually doing a deep dive into how we can learn something about sort of emerging technologies and what they can do, what we have to be careful of, and how we think about them
Right.
moving forwards. And those 12 movies were very, very carefully curated so I could sort of weave this narrative around them. And I came out of Megan 2 thinking, I could use this in a second volume of that book.
I mean, I think that was the piece that was so interesting, was not just, that the movie by itself has like is a piece of cinema or whatever. But again, all movies are fun.
Yes.
They're all these, even if you're like, you personally don't resonate with it and you're like, I can't recommend that movie. It's still a tremendous body of work, right? And
Right.
But what's cool about it is that it pulls out all those narratives that you can use as a massive catalyst for just talking about
exactly
all
it,
these
yes.
very relevant hot topic items.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about sort of value alignment in AI, and it really goes deep into the idea of value alignment and the idea of the paperclip story. There's this. I actually think it's a crazy illustration, but it's been around for ages with artificial intelligence. The idea that you create an AI whose value is to create paperclips.
Yeah,
and
the Paperclip Maximizer.
That's right. And it ends up turning the whole world into paperclips because its values aren't aligned with human values. So that's a big theme in Megan, this idea of value alignment. But then you've also got themes around neural chips, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
And a lot of conversations around AI ethics and what is appropriate, what isn't, guardrails, lack of guardrails, lots of sort of really interesting stuff about power and motives with humans and how they abuse technology.
You're almost, I won't say I'm convinced. Well, and it's not because it's like I have I steer as far away from anything that's in the horror genre as much as I can. I cannot stand it.
Right.
It does. I've always had an overactive imagination, and it preys on me. And so even if you're like, this is ridiculous and silly when you're watching it,
you'll never sleep again. It's a lot of fun.
I don't need that. But that's interesting. But I mean, just from the conversation starter, I mean, that is really intriguing.
Right. Yes.
And I find myself being like, maybe.
So I've now got, I don't think I can do this, but the class that I teach on these 12 movies, typically the last class, I give the students the chance to choose their own movie. And it's usually a really bad choice. I was really tempted this coming semester to not give them that choice, but just to slip Megan in. And I don't think I'll do it. I think it's not fair on them, but I would love to be able to do that. Maybe I'll just put my thumb on the poll.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because I think about like that class. And like, I remember in my undergraduate studies, I took a film class,
right? But
it was, we watched, and I remember seeing it because the students who had gone through it before me were like, oh, you got to check out this course. We watched Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, yes, this is going to be amazing. We watched all like silent films.
Oh, yes.
I mean, they were great. But I mean, it did work. A lot of it stuck with me. I mean, we spent time doing deep dives on Nosferatu, the original,
right?
And like the French red, white, and blue, and all these.
I have a rule in my class, and that is the films have got to be fun. They have got to be films where you want to sit down with a bucket of popcorn and just absorb it. Well, anything which is too intellectual, too sort of slow. No.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree, because I think those films should be saved for like film studies and things like that.
Yes.
Because the other challenge is like in a classroom environment like that, I imagine with these kind of movies, especially the ones that you watch, if you go through the list, you're like, oh, I've seen it. Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
It's also the rewatchability from those students to show their family, their friends, these new insights because they have investigated the story.
That's exactly what happens. So again, this is very much a stealth class. So I probably shouldn't do this, but I sort of partially advertise it as a stoner class. I know, because one of my first students, when we were sort of going through the debrief, they said, I thought this was going to be a stoner class. I just come in and just sort of chill out. But it's designed to be as easy and as inviting and as low pressure as possible. But what happens? This is the magic.
Yep.
I have students that go away and they'll sit down with family and friends and they'll pull out the film and they'll start watching it and start discussing it.
Yep.
It goes way beyond the classroom. They just cannot get it out of their head because of the types of discussions.
And it's like ninja, like
I know,
like ninja.
Done it.
you just learned.
Right.
And not only that,
I've injected that little seed.
That's right. And not only that, you've gone the next step of you're trying to teach now. Because you're showing and you're sharing. And that's
exactly it. Yes.
In some ways, it's a shame that we often have to try to like Trojan horse, like the get you moment. But this works.
And it works because it's unforced. I mean, I even have students bringing their mothers in to watch the movies.
Come on, we don't have to pay for our Netflix subscription this week. Let's go. But one thing I really like about that, though, and this is a more broad comment, I think, also is when you can create a learning environment that lowers it lowers their guard.
Yep.
Right. It's approachable.
Yep.
It's not, again, you're not like, we're only watching French, cinema.
Right.
And you're like, oh this is intimidating. I don't want, and whether it's a film class or any other type of course, if you can make the barrier for entry lower, people come in, they're more relaxed. And then by doing exactly what you've done in that particular case, you can weave in these deep ways of thinking and being critical and creating new opportunities for conversation, investigation, reflection, all of these things. And it's done under the cover of, we're going to approach something that is fun or easy to, take that first step. And then from there, where it goes, it can go very deep and be very intense.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. And it works as a pedagogical tool. It is incredibly powerful. The only difficulty is convincing people who think that you've got to have really hard exams and assessments.
Yeah.
Because those don't exist in something like this, but the learning is accelerated because of that.
And, and a lot of times in education, we talk both from the student side and from the educator side about sticky moments. Right.
Yes.
So how do you, as a faculty, like, how do I create sticky moments? And as a student, when you think about these sticky moments, these are the things that, if you yourself are listening and you've been removed from formal, education settings for a year, 10 years, 20, multiple years, what are the things that you can still remember that still stick with you?
Yes.
And those are those sticky moments that if you can find a way where they happen sort of organically and contextually relevant, like those, like I said, I can, even though I was disappointed when I got into that film class and I was like, oh man.
You still remember it, yes.
But I still remember those films. I still remember the things we talked about, and they still are influencing some of the things I do in terms of media today.
Right, yes.
But it creates these, and I can think back to all of like this spectrum of my experiences, and I can zero in on these sticky moments where they may not have, what I don't remember oftentimes is like, I don't remember the facts and figures I read in the book, but I remember the emotional connection to history.
And that is so important. So the other thing about this class, which I find intriguing, is it is very, very clear from all the time I've been doing this, if you just sit somebody down in front of a movie, they won't learn anything. They'll just be entertained, which is fine. That's what they're for. But if you augment that with the discussion, with the ability to explore the themes in greater depth, that's when the magic happens. So it's the movie plus the environment. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is that's so critical and rich when you can orchestrate it, because it is. I think even other things, again, looking at different forms of media, video games, right? Different, but similar, right? Like, hey, let's play a game. Right. Would you like to play a game? I fell right into that one. There we are. Yes. But even through that process, you might initially sort of surface level blow that off as like, oh, you're just wasting time and for giggles and whatever. And it's like, and there's an element of that's true. It is purely, there can be pure entertainment value. But even then afterwards, it's the discussion around like, what were we doing? How did that work? And even, just, this is kind of a complete aside, but some friends and I, we went back and played a game from 2012 that I haven't played pretty much since then. And it was incredible. The
the recall of all these things. And
interesting, yes.
in like, I knew these maps and all these things. And I was like, this is amazing that how well, I didn't even realize how much I was storing, this.
Just think what else could have been stored in your brain instead
the
of
amount
that.
of literature, right? These deep, I would have remembered the facts and figures.
Right.
Had I not, they were covered with Call of Duty maps and all this kind of stuff. But it was just interesting. And then, again, having those discussions around these games and how they progress, you start talking about the craft. You start talking about
that's it. Yes.
Why. And also, I mean, I would say anyone who's plays video games who's, my age, so over 40 especially, there is a very steep drop off on on like our ability to hang with like the younger kids who are playing these, you play these multiplayer games and you just get destroyed and you hear on the headset, it's like a 10-year-old who's like, I own you. And you're like, what? Why are you talking this way? But very quick. And then, but even then looking back, we're like, were we like, did I get worse? Or you look
have things just changed.
And you look at the games. And one of the things that's very interesting, if you look at the speed of the gameplay and all this kind of stuff, is how much the game industry in many ways, especially with like the category of first person shooters and things like that, how much they have changed to emphasize speed and like dizzy. And I'm talking like dizzying speed. Like it would, I mean, it's crazy.
You're getting to the point where you need that neural chip in order to actually play these things.
It's no joke, but it is interesting because you're like, well, yes, I'm sure there is also the loss of motor acuity and skill over time with age and all that, but also the game industry has changed and and it's like, who's buying the games? Where is that market? And it's a younger, more skewed, who are more adept to that, that capability.
But also, it does attest to the sophistication of these. Not just the game, but the community that you're part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's so that, again, just kind of coming back to like the film stuff, but what is fascinating about that, or I would make the extension of any media is, again, the investigation of it to understand what its role is. Because, again, going back to, sort of all the McLuhanisms around media, all media work us over and they work us over completely. And so that's always that question is understanding where am I in this process.
and I had never made that connection before, but that is so relevant to this class.
Yeah.
Because effectively the medium in the class is the message.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the fact that I'm immersing these students in an environment where they become part of the story and their brain is engaging on multiple levels.
And it's it's phenomenal. And I feel like it's sort of like, well, this might be over the top for some people, but I would say there's almost this like epiphany or this new world that opens to you once you become aware of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So if you're just like, I'm just me, that's fine. And I think a lot of people have that experience. But if you start thinking about, again, how you fit in this bigger sphere of the media, the message, what is actually happening here? What is the power of, that's kind of like the whole giveaway of that sort of pithy term, right? Is it the individual movie doesn't mean anything. It's what does that medium, what can that do in terms of spreading information and understanding? Yeah. That is what becomes, and the adjacent possible space.
Right, yes, yep.
All of those things, this swirling ball, this sphere almost of like possibilities.
Right.
That is what becomes important. And where you fit within there, all of a sudden you look at things completely differently.
Right. Yes,
and how you interact with media or how you feel about stuff, suddenly you have this, the way I've tried to explain this to my students in the past too, is like, this gives you almost like a superpower to understand, like when you see something, that you don't just take it at face value. Right. You instantly start asking questions about it.
Yes.
Who stands to gain from this? Where did this come from? What's the motivation?
Right. Yes.
Is this really the thing that matters, or is it the platform that
you
matters?
Must be a real downer going to movies with everybody's just enjoying the movie and you're saying, no, have you thought about what the ulterior motive is here? How are you being manipulated? What do they want you to think?
I'll stand up in the crowd. You people realize you're all being manipulated here.
Right. Yes.
Let me put my sandwich board on and what? No. I can bite my lip and just enjoy it as well.
Give it another 10 years. You're going to be part of one of those couples sort of where you go into the movie theater and they're saying, grumbling away, sort of saying,
Well, it's funny because I listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast a lot, and I think has earned a reputation as like the worst like movie because he ruins every movie
Right.
with these like, you realize the planet was spinning the wrong direction. All these like factual points that pulls out, and it just kind of deflates.
Which I hate that. So this is also one of my rules. And so I am absolutely fine with movies that make no physical sense whatsoever.
Sure.
And I get really annoyed with people that pick movies apart saying, well, that isn't physical reality. That would never happen, because that's not the point.
No, it's not the point.
The point is the storytelling with humans at the center of the story.
That's it. And I think I may have mentioned this before. And when I go to movies or TV shows, same thing, I don't have any problem suspending belief, right? Or suspending reality. It's so long. And my biggest complaint, though, is when something is internally inconsistent.
I know, yes.
That's when I start going, oh, come on.
Yes.
Because that usually is, and there's lots of examples this way and the other, but a lot of times for me, that becomes such a pet peeve because ultimately it tends to be plot armor, where they'll break the rules because they need to make some weird thing happen, or like the villain is somehow untouchable and all this stuff. And you're like, you don't need that. I'm like, ugh. But
yes.
Yeah, it's
well. I mean, so part of that is the God in the Machine thing, which actually brings in sort of the movie Ex Machina, which sort of is a play on that. But the idea that everything goes impossibly wrong, and then you just have the touch of the God to make everything miraculously right.
That's right.
It really irritates.
Yep. I refer to it as plot armor, right? Where it's like this character can't die, so therefore weird miraculous things have to have to happen in order for that to take place. But actually, while we're talking about this, one thing I think would be I want to ask you about, because I think it'd be interesting to explore. And I need to look it up unless you know them off the top of your head. The 5 known, I know there's 5, the known like plot story devices of all stories. It's man versus. I should look this up to get it right.
Do because I'm actually a little skeptical about this. They're the same as the sort of the steps of the hero's journey. There are these sort of structures, but yes, the sort of 5 basic sort of archetypal stories.
I have them. Okay, so it's I'm going to use man, but it's we'll say human. We'll say human.
Yes.
So human versus human.
Yes.
Which is basically conflict between 2 characters.
Yep.
Then there's human versus nature. I should say character instead of man. That just it doesn't have to be a human.
Yep.
So character versus nature, where the character is up against natural forces.
Yep.
Then there is character versus society, where the character faces challenges against societal norms or laws.
Yep.
Then there is character versus self, which is about internal conflict.
Yep.
And the final one is character versus fate or supernatural.
Right.
And the gist of those is that all storytelling
fits in there
in one of those 5 or multiple.
Yes.
But that's it.
Yes.
And that humans are not capable of telling any kind of story other than these 5.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about, the reason I had looked this up, that I got it so quickly because I had looked it up previously. I was walking to Trader Joe's or something, and I was thinking about this.
Yep.
One of the weird things I walk and think about.
Right.
And I was like, I'm curious with developments in AI and sort of the co-piloting different story devices, is if there is a way to come up with a 6th version of this, or what would there be, or why are we limited to these?
Yeah.
Unless they're just broad enough where no matter what, you could always, they can subsume anything that you decide is new.
That's what I'm thinking, because in each case, there is the character at the center, which, yes, is sort of human, but also it's a proxy for human. So if you have an animal story,
it's still character.
We love the story because we can project ourselves onto the animal, or we can sort of feel that empathetic connection. But I wonder whether they are so self-evident that it's possible to fit anything, no matter how weird, into it.
And that's, I mean, I didn't get anywhere. I just thought about this for 45 minutes. Because that's one of the things I'm wondering, and also part of it is there a story that, I don't know, there's a part of this too that always triggers me as, again, this like selfishness of us to, again, whether it's an anthropomorphized, fuzzy bunny or, robot or whatever, we can't help but project ourselves, the human, as the character in some way. Yeah. And I'm like, is there a story that does not allow that? And I can't think of anything. And
if there is, would it be a story?
Would it be a story, or is it
storytelling is innately human? It's sort of it has to resonate with us. Otherwise, what's the point? But here is the extension. So you look at artificial intelligence, and you'll have some people. This is right on the fringes of thinking. Some people would argue we're effectively in the process of developing an artificial form of intelligence, and in that it's not human, it's alien. So if we get to that point, what will the stories that AI tells itself and others be like?
Yeah.
Will they still fit this archetype? Is this so universal that the AI will put itself into the character position and all of this will fit like a hand in a glove?
Yeah.
Or will there be other forms of stories that are utterly alien to us?
Yeah. I don't know.
Right.
But that's what I think that fits in nicely because that's what I was kind of thinking. I'm like, is this also potentially one of those examples of the limitations of just the human mind,
right? Where
we aren't capable of telling stories, or even telling stories doesn't make sense. But I don't know. It's hard for me to articulate what I'm like.
Yes. But I think part of this is I'm sort of thinking about the metaphorical human shape.
Yeah.
And the human shape, sort of whether it's physical, whether it's emotional or whatever, has a particular form, which means that there are only certain things that it can do. We can't do an infinite number of things.
We're kind of, in some ways, we're prison to our embodiment in some ways.
That's right. You can't suddenly start sort of breathing nothing but nitrogen and live. So,
I was gonna say, you can. It doesn't last very long.
Right. So I mean, it wouldn't be particularly clever of me to say, yeah, you can have a human in any situation, but I bet they're breathing oxygen at some point. Of course they are, because that's our biology.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of part of the shape of being human.
It is. Yeah. And there's something, I don't know, there's something about it where it just, it strikes me as it's something very simplistic, but also very limiting.
Yes.
Where it makes me then I start thinking, this is what happens when I go for a walk. As then you start thinking about this stuff. But then I start wondering, so also just about our own understanding of our own consciousness and intelligence and the mind and all these other pieces where I'm like, is it a limitation that the humans aren't capable of a higher order of mind or intelligence to be able to truly understand why this is a limit?
So you've got me thinking about this now. So
I didn't intend for us to go down this deep of a philosophical, talking about a stoner class.
But this is the trick.
Yeah.
You start off easy and inviting and curious with no pressure, and you suddenly discover yourself having these deep conversations.
I mean, we started with Superman and Megan 2, and we ended up here.
We did. But so here's where I'm pushing. This is just one example, and there are a number of these. And it's a book, a science fiction book from Ian M. Banks called Accession.
Okay.
And it is a book which is primarily with the characters as being these super artificial intelligences, these machines that are so far beyond human cognition and capability that they're almost like gods. And in his world, he has this really interesting dynamic between the AIs and humans. But the whole story in Accession is about these AI superbrains experiencing something in the universe that they can't explain. And that is the tension in it. It's them trying to make sense of this thing which is new to them. And I'm wondering whether that comes into the category of an attempt to push storytelling beyond the bounds of what's merely human, or whether it does just collapse into one of these 5 categories. And I think it might be right on the edge.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not familiar with that particular book, so I'll have to put that. We'll add that to the summer reading list.
Yeah, and it's one of the harder books of his. But you talk to sort of various people in the tech community. So, for instance, Elon Musk. It's one of his favorite books, and I think because it goes beyond
challenges
human,
a lot of those,
and it looks at sort of what happens if we have this completely alien form of intelligence that still is challenged by something that it doesn't understand.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also a natural progression of where, some of the things that I think we'll have to grapple with sooner than later in many ways is this idea of an alien intelligence that we are creating.
Right. Yes,
alien to humans, but not from not extraterrestrial.
That's
just
right. Yes.
Alien,
homegrown alien.
Homespun alien language. Right. And there are lots of examples of this going back, probably almost a decade now with Google. I remember there was an article a long time ago, probably 2016-ish from DeepMind or something that was, they had essentially these I forget what's the acronym for like the opposing AIs where they challenge each other.
Yeah.
You're
putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I'm saying I forgot what it is.
Yes.
Adversarial something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that very quickly they had created their own language to communicate with one another.
Right, yes.
And the researchers literally pulled the plug because they were like,
they didn't understand what was going on.
We lost control. We didn't understand it.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding around some of the advancements in that particular space of AI compared to like the large language models, which, for our benefit, show everything in tokenized measurements that are human or
but
words.
We still don't know what's happening in the black box. This is one of the mysteries of the current wave of AI, and especially these sort of big sort of foundation models, that we do not know what's happening.
Inside.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, it's interesting where you can go, interesting. But then when you start thinking about it, right? Let's go to the medium of that, which is, and again, there is a potential where we are cut out of being part of the loop of understanding.
Well, but this to me keeps coming back to stories. And you ask this question, what are the stories that AI tells itself and tells other AIs? And I think that is a deeply profound question. Maybe not quite now with the current state of the technology, but in a year or so's time, I think that this is going to be incredibly revealing.
Yeah. And, and again, these kind of things tend to fold onto other topics too, because then I come back to this idea, right, of, I think last week I had mentioned that cool website, the low background steel.
That's right. Yes.
And as this line of where you can see where things have been influenced or contaminated by generative
pre and post nuclear detonation.
Which apparently I didn't know they have the word for it, but I'm looking at their website and it was the Trinity tests in 1945.
Yes.
Creating these like radioactive isotopes that are all like stuck in steel and stuff like that. But starting to think about this again, in terms of other pieces that we've talked, we had a whole show too. One of them was about the dead internet theory.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
But also about this sort of converging, I'll call it this converging ball of content, right? So this idea of you have the dead internet theory, which is essentially that most of the content on the internet is being generated or already has been generated by a non-human entity, so a bot or some other sort of artificial generator. Then you have things like just the sheer volume of information. So too much information, this idea of when things became digitized, right? There's more information than and more information is available and more information is streamed to an individual than they can possibly cognitively handle. Right? Putting us into these doom loops of like 24-hour news cycles.
Right. And you basically got everything swamped by noise.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find the signals that you're looking for.
Yep. And then on top of that, as something that was a little bit, I like the way it was sort of phrased, this idea of liquid media, that things are no longer these discrete sort of media elements, right? So written text is no longer just written text.
Right.
Written text is used to create on-the-fly audio, video, images, and vice versa. That basically this information in some ways can become liquefied and then reconstituted. It's like, if you think about it from, I'll use a Star Trek reference here. It's almost like the replicator for any sort of media. You're like, I would like because think about it. You're like, I would like an image of whatever you want.
Right. Yes.
There it goes. It's been produced for you from this sort of liquid media ecosystem.
And actually, I love that analogy. Yes, because you've got this sort of transmutation from one form to another, from sort of words or language to images to video to.
And no longer do these things have they're no longer safe in their original form that they can be. And what does that mean? They mix together, they blur, and then, so like all these things swirling. Again, this is what happens when I take a walk. I'm like, oh my God, it's exhausting. But I mean, it's just wild. Again, when you start thinking about it, you're like, okay, so what does this mean? Like moving, and I was thinking about this low background steel sort of analogy, and this swirling vortex ball of liquid media mixed with all these things.
This is what happens in the Arizona heat, by the way.
Oh, right. You're like, I'm not seeing an oasis. I'm seeing these
mirages and these
Like, oh, this is how you become that bleached skeleton in the
It
crossroads.
really is, yes.
What happened to Sean?
With those little sort of words carved in the sand. What if?
Yeah, exactly. What if we're all liquid media? Like, well, it wasn't liquid water, so here lies Sean. You know, but yeah, I just find this concept though fascinating because, you know, as we are continuing to move forward, I don't see any sign right now that we're pausing. I mean, a lot of the, you know, newer regulations, even some of the legal cases saying like, no, I believe, I forget the judge's name on a recent case who was argued in favor of foundation models being able to basically eat the world,
right?
Saying that not only is it okay that it is, I think the term was something like extraordinarily transformative new use, because there's in copyright law, right? There's an idea if it's for new and transformative uses, you can do these things.
Okay, yes.
And that was sort of the call was that these AI platforms are radically or transformationally transformative works.
Yep. So copyright law doesn't apply because
it's sort of like
transformative. Yes.
Yep. And so kind of like move over. We're just going to keep cranking things out.
Yep.
But then when you start again backing up and looking at this whole thing, you're like, well, what will happen to, and even now, I mean, if you talk to anyone online, you know, Meta through Facebook, I think we talked about this a while, probably that same episode we did with the Dead Internet Theory.
Yep.
They were talking then about the desire to create artificial users.
Right.
They've done it fully. I know I've created one myself. I don't use it, but I was like, this is so easy.
Yep.
But they're flooding social media with these artificial entities,
right?
That are not there to just like your post. They're there to prolong engagement.
Right.
So it really starts to question, you know, through the, again, while you're looking into this what's real and how are we going to be able to mitigate or seek out real interactions and
right. Yeah, so this ties in so importantly to questions around what it means to be human, which of course is one of the things we do.
One of our core tenets.
The more we create these environments that erode what we fundamentally feel as being important, the more important it is to anchor ourselves on what makes us us. But I think it also brings us really neatly back to thinking about sort of sci-fi movies and movies in general and media in general as both a lens and a catalyst to begin to engage with these questions. So and you think about sort of the things that sort of go round your head and rattle around your head when you're trying to make sense of these. It's one thing just to talk about them, but there are very little points of connection. As soon as you anchor those in something which is a common point of focus, like a movie or a book or something, you can expand the conversation in ways that actually mean things to people, that resonate with them, where they can feel as if they can understand these ideas and begin to run with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, again, it's really interesting. And I wonder about this element too of, you know, will we see, you know, you look at movements, you look at eras and things, or human history is a series of pendulum swings. Right. We swing one way, we come back. Yeah. You know, whether it's political, whether it's, you know, you can fill in that there's a very common sort of pattern of pushing to one area and go, whoop, too far.
I know.
And then pushing back and then going, whoop,
yes.
that was too far the other way.
Yes.
And so, you know, the best place to live is like right in one of the, the swings towards where you want to go, but then be gone before you start coming back the other way.
Just leave that to your kids.
You know, right.
Next
their
generation.
Problem,
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if what will come in, you know, the next generation or maybe the generation after, or maybe even sooner, you know, because if you look at the youth today, so kids who are in, you know, elementary school, middle school, high school around the globe right now are doing so with artificial intelligence. They're being like this whole, you know, liquid media, the soup of information.
This is the norm to them. Yes.
And I do wonder if there will be a pushback to this and what that will look like in terms of, I mean, we see, you know, I mean, I remember when I was in college and stuff, that's when like the hipster movement, like, you know, it's like suddenly vinyl was really popular again and these kind of things. But I do wonder, and there's been little sprinkles of this along the way with people going back to
flip phones and things,
flip phones, digital cameras that are just digital cameras, not like those little pocket.
But to be honest, a lot of that is on the fringes.
It is.
Yes.
But I wonder over time if there will become a sort of like a backlash or a counter movement.
Yeah.
Because as this moves forward, and the risk, I think, to throw one out there that is, it's not an existential risk, or at least not yet. But when you look at the consolidation of that information sphere, the control of it is being consolidated by fewer and fewer powerful companies, or organizations. We'll call it that because they're not always like a company. It could be a nation state, whatever. That sets up a really interesting and again, looking at human history, when the consolidation of power is too much, there is a revolution. There is
something breaks.
Something breaks.
But then there are so many questions here. But one of them is now different to the past?
That's a good question.
It's always a really difficult question because at any moment in the past where you've had this tension and you've had revolution, there are going to be people that have been asking, well, maybe this time is different. And of course it isn't. But I still have this sense that at this period in human history, there are things that are different. So this is the first time we've ever been able to create machines that emulate what is the essence of who we are. We've never been able to do that before.
Nope. That's different.
That is different. The type of power that these large organizations have and their influence over society, it's in some ways it parallels what's happened in the past, but in some ways it's very, very different in terms of the level of power and reach and potential manipulation. And so there are a number of things like this that make me wonder whether now is different. And that raises the question of whether revolution will be possible, or whether things are just sort of too set on the pathway forward. Or if there is revolution, will it actually feel and look different to how it's looked in the past? And what exactly will that mean?
I think you hit right on the head is one of the challenges. And that's one of the things that's always interesting is especially when you're in the middle of it, how do you know?
See, that's right.
Oftentimes,
well, I was thinking about that when you said existential risk. The thing with existential risks is you never spot the existential risk until after it's happened.
Right.
Yes. Which is a little difficult if everything's been...
Speaking of great movies, what was the Netflix, Don't Look Up? Phenomenal movie. Oh my God. That's so much fun. But I think that's one of the challenges. Normally, these things are sorted by historians after the fact, right?
Yes.
Even things like when you say, like, when are we in the next, technological or industrial revolution? You're like, well, historians decide when you cross over.
See that?
Because when you're in it, you're always in a transitional phase.
That's right. You can't actually see.
And it's only when you have distance from it that you can throw an arbitrary line and say, well, it was the year 2025 when we crossed that threshold. But it is always interesting. And that is, I think, I've talked before about how I enjoyed so much Neil Postman's article, or it was a talk he did around the Y2K bug and all the panic that was ensuing around that. But again, this thing of like these technological changes are nothing new,
right,
over human history. Now, but that still, when you're in the midst of one, that is the question of, will this shake out to be so different in terms of the magnitude, the type of disruption, the type of change that this will have? Is this going to be fundamentally different than, or like, if you think back to some big ones, right? The printing, internet, right? The digitization of information, the internet, mass communication capabilities, the Gutenberg the written word itself.
Right. Yes.
Going back to these massively transformative, like eras or epochs in human history. And if you look at something like the invention of the written word and artificial intelligence, and you put those two things next to each other, would you be able to say one, like they're on pair, they're on par with each other? And again, possibility space, the AI wouldn't even be possible without that first one. So you could argue.
You've always got these interconnections.
That's it.
On the other hand, when you look at sort of the bigger context, so I don't know how many people were around in the world with the printing press. Not that many compared to what we have now, but also lines of information flow were incredibly slow compared to what we have now.
Sure.
So you begin to look at the world as a complex system. And what we know about complex systems is you can have linear behavior when everything is fairly predictable until you hit tipping points when everything becomes nonlinear, veers towards, in some cases, chaotic behavior. But that depends on hitting boundaries of systems and really stretching those. So when you go from having sort of 500 million, 1 billion people, whatever, to having 8 billion people, all interconnected at an incredible level, you've immediately changed fundamentally the dynamics of the system.
Yeah.
So you put something like AI into this system, categorically different from putting the printing press into the system as it was a few hundred years ago.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I think, and it does make you, again, these are some of the things that I wonder about.
Right.
But it again is asking those questions. I'm like, well, what will happen?
Right.
And as you mentioned with like a chaotic system,
Yep.
I can't resist a callback to our friend Ian Malcolm with
cool.
the chaos
see,
theory.
This is why these movies are so good.
So damn good
Right.
because you could avoid we could always come back to it. Ian Malcolm of Ian Malcolmism at some point.
The chaotician.
The chaotician. Yeah. But it is, you bring back this element of chaos where, a very small, subtle shift or change has unforeseen ramifications that could be either catastrophic or it could be beneficial. However, even catastrophic things can be beneficial.
Right.
But
and here's how we've managed this as a species for how many millions of years. We've managed it by effectively sort of having this ability when chaos happens, when tipping points happen and everything changes, we've had the ability to innovate out of it so we reach that stable point again. Yeah. But the question is, will that always be possible? Will humans always be able to innovate their way out of chaos?
Yeah. That's the $1 million question.
It is. And just thinking through this logically, the answer is no. Maybe we're going to be able to do it for the next 2 or 3 tipping points. So maybe AI isn't one of these. But we have limited ability. We have limited intelligence. There's a physical sort of set of boundaries to what an individual can do or even a group of individuals can do. So at some point, I think we have to assume that humanity will not be able to innovate its way out of the problems it
forever.
creates.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that you can chalk that up to this list of these huge unanswered questions, right? We have, again, we were talked earlier about like, we don't understand our own capabilities of understanding.
Right.
Maybe we'll never be able to.
Yep.
Maybe our brain can't think about how the brain, we're limited.
Yep.
But also with that is like, we don't understand fully yet the human body.
Right.
We don't understand fully the way the world, the physical world around us, we still don't understand, have a complete picture of that.
We're full of hubris. We think we do, but we actually
we
don't
know
understand
lots
a lot.
of stuff.
Yes.
But we are far from knowing everything. Right.
But here's the really lovely sort of juicy twist to this, and this is something that some people argue, and they will argue that no, humans cannot innovate their way out of every problem that's going to come, but maybe artificial intelligence can. So maybe this is why we've got to invest so heavily in AI, because this is going to be our savior when we make a complete and utter mess of things.
It's possible.
Oh, that could be the mess.
or we come back to the Paperclip Maximizer with the poorly aligned AI who says, you know what? We got it from here, people. Yes. You can just become like the little mammals that scurry around underneath our data centers.
That's right. And I've got to throw this in. This is probably a good way to sort of segue towards wrapping this up. You go back to Megan 2. There's a really, really nice callback to Microsoft's Clippy at the end. So you've got the connection with the Paperclip Maximizer and Clippy, that awful sort of pseudo AI assistant, if anybody would remembers this.
Oh my gosh. I just remember like the first time you saw it. So I think I was probably a kid.
It was the 1990s, wasn't it?
Yes. And you would have that first like, it had sound. It was like the ding, ding, like it was tapping on because back then, gather around kids, once upon a time, your computer monitors were glass because they were CRTs. So it had the little it was inside the machine. It was like ting, ting, ting. It looks like you're working on a paper. And you're like, this is so cool. And then, of course, it couldn't do anything. It was awful. And then by the third or fourth time you saw it, you're like, okay, joke's over.
Right, yeah.
And then after that, you're like, I hate this thing. Like the amount of the loathing that poor Clippy. And that, in some ways, the Paperclip Maximizer is their revenge.
There we are, yes.
Now, there's a story we can run to Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Who needs Megan 3? We have Clippy, the Paperclip Maximizer.
Right. And then you got Clippy 2, Clippy 3, Revenge of Clippy.
This is franchisable, man. We're talking, this is like, we've got a gold mine here of summer blockbusters. Oh, well, I don't think we can top Clippy, the
Revenge of Clippy.
Yes. Revenge of Clippy. I don't think we can top that. So
should wrap this up.
I think we can wrap up this yet again another thrilling adventure of Modem Futura in July, the summer edition, where we get all kinds of wacky stuff. Where we start off with, I love it. We went what a thought train we were on this one. That's a good one. So perfect for a stoner class, I think.
Perfect. Yes.
So anyway, just massive thank you for all of our listeners for supporting Modem Futura. Again, would love it if you could give us a rating and review. It helps people discover us, and it's fun. We've been climbing through the ranks.
And actually, this is officially our 40th
Oh,
episode.
it is. You're right. Just like me, this podcast is now over 40. So there we have it. That's it's over the hill. Do they still say that?
No, it's just maturing into its glory years.
That's right.
Yes.
It's like a nice, a fine bourbon or a good wine. It's just now starting to come into its drinkability.
I'm not sure how many good wines are 40 plus years old. But
It also shows, I'm like, here's some 40, it's just vinegar now.
right. No, don't get there.
Well, we promised it. We have now become more mature as I try to feed you.
Try and convince people of that.
As I try to feed you vinegar.
Right.
But yeah, no, this is fantastic. Yeah, 40 episodes. That's wild. But yeah, it's been wonderful for the support we've had. It's been amazing. I don't look at the statistics all the time, but when I do, it's always encouraging to see like we are climbing through the ranks of the podcast charts, but those ratings and reviews are honestly what give us the biggest impact on those charts, because that is how speaking of AI, that is how all the machine generated algorithms help people find and discover our stuff. And so, continue. Thank you and ask for you to do that. And hopefully you enjoy some summer movies and some fun times. And Andrew, always a pleasure. This is so much fun.
Same here.
I'm hopefully you didn't get any sweat. We're far enough apart where at least I didn't sweat on you, so that's good.
And the studio didn't fall apart. So
that's right. We're gonna sign off before anything comes clamoring down. And we'll look forward for another summer edition next time on Modem Futura.
We'll see you there.
Demodulating signal.
Modem Futura is a production of the Future of Being Human initiative at Arizona State University. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. To learn more about the Future of Being Human initiative and all of our other projects, please visit us on the web at futureofbeinghuman.asu.edu.
End transmission.